Now, our next witness again is anonymous. The witness number is W1005, and he will be known as Mr. A.K. So the order reads as follows. The name and address of witness W1005 and any other identifying information such as the witness's image or a description of their appearance cannot be disclosed or published in any form unless express permission is given by me or by the solicitor to the inquiry acting on my behalf. Witness W1005 must be referred to only as Mr. A.K. The order remains in force for the duration of the inquiry and at all times thereafter, unless otherwise ordered, and I may vary or revoke the order by making a further order during the course of the inquiry. Mr. A.K., please.
Mr. A.K., your full name is known to the inquiry. Could you please repeat after me? I do solemnly, sincerely.
I do solemnly, sincerely.
And truly declare and affirm.
And truly declare and affirm.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth. Thank you.
You have severe haemophilia A. You were diagnosed as a young child. In the course of your childhood, did you receive treatment?
I did.
What kind of treatment did you get?
Until I was approximately 11, 12, 13, 14. I know that's a bit that's not very direct, but until I was then, I didn't receive any treatment other than whole blood, plasma, or what has been written in my notes as experimental, literally just experimental, which nobody has explained to me. When I was around about when I was a young teenager, I received cryoprecipitate, which I had either at the hospital or unusually, but on home treatment, and then I was moved on to factor concentrates.
And your treatment during the years with which we're concerned for the purposes of infection with HIV, your treatment was at the Royal Free Hospital in the early 80s.
It was.
And you received numerous different factor products, pretty much the whole range of commercial products and NHS.
Yes, I have as you have my notes, some of my medical notes anyway, and in those days we would write out by hand treatment sheets and the lists of the various different products are there, and yes, there could be up to 12 or 15 different ones, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for any of them.
You were an adult at this point, were you given any advice or warnings or information about any risks of infection associated with the use of the factor VIII?
No, I wasn't.
Was the choice of which factor product ever discussed with you?
No, I don't think I have ever in my whole adult life been given a choice of blood clotting treatment. I can't think of a time where I was ever given a choice. I might have been given what the doctor would call an explanation as to why I was being given one treatment rather than another, but I can't remember ever having a choice, no.
There was, you had a particular experience when your appendix was removed. What was that?
Yes, that was when I can remember that. So I was at the Royal Free Hospital, and yeah, I had a grumbling appendix, went up there one night, my mum drove me up there, and then basically the pain went away. I remember it quite well. So I went home overnight, the pain started again, and they took me in and they realised that I needed to have my appendix out, and they performed the operation under the cover of cryoprecipitate, which I think it was. I think they thought it was quite risky. It wasn't something that had been done a lot, but it had been done before. But it's important to me because that operation was entirely successful. I didn't bleed excessively, so the bleeding was controlled. I remember I had to come home and actually take afternoons off school, which is pretty cool. So that was just to make sure that I healed, and belt and braces, I expect. But the point being, and I had cryoprecipitate at home every day for a period of about 2 weeks, I think, which was pretty horrible, but it stopped the bleeding. But the point being is that cryoprecipitate was used, they didn't use factor, and it worked.
Over the following years, once you were receiving factor products and receiving them fairly frequently, as I understand it, were you receiving them prophylactically, or was it only in response to a bleed?
It was prophylactically, but that didn't mean that I used it correctly. Like many other people with haemophilia, I didn't like sticking a needle in me. It took me many, many years to actually get used to doing that. My mother would do it at home when I was a child and when I was a teenager sometimes. So sometimes I wouldn't use it as I should do, but yes, I was on a prophylactic regime from a very early age.
At some point in the 1980s, you learnt that you'd been infected with hepatitis B as a child. What can you recall about that?
I think it was later than the 80s. I'm a bit unsure about an awful lot of dates, which isn't surprising because my medical notes are all over the place as well. It became apparent at some point that I had been infected with Hep B, and I asked for my notes from Oxford Haemophilia Centre, which is where I was. And I remember asking that at that point I was doing some. So I was amongst haemophilia health professionals, and I asked the doctors about this. And basically, and I can do further reading and see that hepatitis B, it was accepted that people who were using blood clotting agents were getting Hep B, and that was it was called post-infusion hepatitis, and that was common, and that seemed to be accepted as a norm. But one of the reasons that upset me a bit was that I know my mother and father, I never told them about my infections. But they never knew about that, and they should have known about that when I was a child.
Now, your records show, as you've described in your statement, blood samples, frozen blood samples, show that you last tested HIV negative on the 3rd of August 1982, and the first positive HIV result is the 18th of September 1984.
Yes.
So you were infected and seroconverted some point in that window, but you don't know precisely when, or indeed which batch or batches infected you. What can you recall about how you were told and when you were told that you were HIV positive?
I can recall it very well. I don't know when it was because there is no mention of it in my notes. This isn't unusual, as I think most of us in this room know. I remember it very well. I went to the hospital. I went for what I thought was a routine clinic, and I was sitting in the room, and the doctor said to me, "Do you want to know your status?" My memory is that those were the words she used. She didn't say HTLV3 status, which is what it was called then. I may be wrong, but this is how I remember it. And I replied, yes, I suppose so, or something like that. And she came back in the room 5 minutes later after leaving me sitting there for some reason and said, yeah, I'm afraid you're positive. The point there is that I knew the minute she walked out of that room that when she came back she was going to tell me I was positive. And the reason I knew was because leading up to that time, and I only know roughly when it was, but I don't really know, up to that time, the media that I would have consumed would have been the BBC, the Guardian, maybe the Times, the Sunday Times. That was the sort of media I'd be reading and watching. And every now and again there would be an article or a piece on the TV about, as they called it, the gay plague, and all we knew about it was that it was a virus and it was mainly affecting gay men, IV drug users, people from Haiti. And you would see images, which I'm sure you're all aware of, whatever age you are, of men dying, looking as though they were in concentration camps, basically. Sorry, what was your question? Oh, when I was told, yeah?
Yeah, and how you were told.
Yes, and how I was told.
You were saying, I think you knew.
Sorry, thank you, Sir Brian. Yes, always there. Yeah, so through the media, and there had been talk about, on the sidelines of the media, not from my hospital, not from my health carers, there'd been talk about, is this, whatever it is this virus transmissible via blood and blood products? And it was obvious. It was me, someone with a bleeding disorder who was using a blood product. And it was, yes, it was just obvious to me that they didn't know much about it and there wasn't that much to read, but what there was to read and what I could find out, which was very little, but it was pretty obvious, yeah, that I would be positive.
And you've said in your statement that whenever it was you were told, you vividly recall asking all sorts of questions of the doctor.
Yeah, I think, I just remember, I think most people would have asked, what is it? What's it going to do to me? Am I going to die? If I'm going to die, when am I going to die? Is there a cure for it? And I don't ever remember any sort of coherent reply. I mean, maybe there was one. It's a long time ago. There are no notes. Part of it I remember vividly, part of it I don't. But I don't remember having any of those questions answered. And the general feeling was, well, just go away. We'll keep checking you up. If you could probably come in a bit more often and we'll have a look at you. And we'll let you know if anything happens. And that was basically it from my health providers.
And you've said in your statement that the only answer you can recall being given was don't have sex, or if you have to, use 2 condoms.
Yes, there was.
Whether that was at that appointment or a later one, you weren't sure.
Yeah, around that time. I mean, there obviously were consultations and appointments and discussions following that, because I still went there anyway because I had haemophilia. And in general, the only thing I remember any of the doctors, it was the doctors, not the nurses, saying to me was, you know you must be careful if you have sex, and it's probably best if you don't, but if you do, use 2 condoms. A bit of a cliche, but yes, I was told that.
Had you been told before this that your blood was being tested for HIV? Had you consented to that test?
No, I hadn't been told, and I hadn't consented for it to be tested for HCV3.
You say in your statement that you weren't, from your healthcare professionals, given much information or advice to help you manage or understand the infection. Did you find out information from any other sources over the years? And if so, from where?
Yes. Well, first of all, because there wasn't any information from my hospital, I remember I think I actually went and bought the Lancet a few times and would have scoured it. I may have gone in the library and looked in the Lancet. I would just be going through the Lancet looking for HTLV3 and then AIDS, and there was very rarely stuff in it. I would be looking at the broadsheets, to see if there was any information, and really there was very little. The only information that I do remember is that over the period of a year, or maybe probably more than that, well, no, maybe a year, 18 months, there was some further information about this virus being transmitted through blood and blood products. And so very slowly, yes, it became obvious what had happened.
You say in your statement that you believe that your doctors, and you say specifically Professor Lee, were doing research on their patients, including yourself. What makes you think that you were the subject of research without your knowledge?
I realised over the years, because the older I get and the more I got myself involved, I obviously had to get involved with the HIV world because that was the world I was living in. And I realised that Professor Lee was a researcher. I realised that the blood samples that showed that the hospital went back to see if I had HIV or not were being stored, frozen and stored, which is very sensible with consent, for the purposes of research. So that's how I realised what happened there.
You describe various experiences of attending the Haemophilia Centre at the Royal Free Hospital over the following years, attending appointments, asking questions, and you said you look through the notes and you see conversations where you were scared, alone, frightened, and trying to make sense of your situation. What can you recall about that time and the kind of experiences you had at the Haemophilia Centre?
I just remember having, when I was told I had HIV, I don't think I've ever been as lonely as a human being can be, and I'm sure that's shared by many people in this room and who will read and listen to this transcript. It's just it's just feeling lonely. If you get diagnosed today with something like cancer, it's scary. Of course it is. It's horrible. But there is somewhere to go, and there is usually a reason. But yes, there is information. There are people you can talk to, but literally, I had nobody to talk to. That nobody knew anything, and that made me just feel so lonely.
You recall in your witness statement, again, when you attended the centre, being asked lots of questions about your sex life, and you've got a recollection of a checkup which would involve having to strip to your underpants and be checked for signs of AIDS. Can you tell us about that?
My relationship with my haemophilia centre wasn't a particularly good one anyway. I'm not a patient. I was angry. I was confused. I was scared. So those particular... they would get you to go in more often. I would go in, and because I was on prophylactic treatment, I would pick up treatment to take home. And every time I went, it must have probably been once every 6 weeks or so, because they wouldn't give me much factor at one time. They probably wanted to keep tabs on people. I don't know, really. But I would go in there, and you would go in there and you would wait. You'd wait in a waiting room with other people, and I would never talk to them, and they would never talk to me. It's weird. And then you'd be called in, and they would say to you, like, you'd strip to your underpants, which is sometimes what you do. It depends what sort of examination you're having, and you would be asked to lie down. The clinician would have left the room then, and then they would come back, and then they would feel you all over. They were feeling my lymph glands. It's obvious now, on my neck and on my groin and everywhere. And they were doing a general physical. They were out of their depth. I think if I had, at any point, I had been ill with an HIV-related illness, it would have been pretty obvious. And some people were becoming ill. Luckily, at that point, I wasn't. But yeah, it was a bit like being in some sort of prison camp. That's how it felt. And anyway, they would do that with you, and they'd ask you a few questions. I'd quite often get reminded about, was I having sex or not? was being careful, and then I'd get my factor and I'd be on my way.
And one of the concerns you have, I understand, is that the haemophilia centre, experts in haemophilia, were trying to treat HIV and later hepatitis C at areas in which they were not experts. Is that right?
Yeah, that was probably a little bit later on, and a lot of this is stuff I've heard from other people, because since then I have met so many other people in my situation. But yes, when this is asked, so we should go to AZT. Sorry, I see where you're coming from. Right. So if I could talk about the AZT.
Yes.
Yes.
It's going to be the next question, so
Oh,
absolutely.
okay.
Fire away.
But then after that, there are issues about haemophilia doctors trying to treat. So AZT, I didn't speak to anybody else there. People didn't talk to each other much. Obviously, those of us who were infected, there were reasons we didn't. We were all scared, we didn't know what to do. Thinking back to it now, it's just madness. But anyway, so I remember going to a public meeting with my then girlfriend, who became my wife, who's now my ex-wife. And we went to a meeting, and there were quite a lot of us. I suppose about 30 of us sitting in a room, and Professor Lee told us that there was this drug called AZT. It was an experimental drug. It wasn't licensed. It was the only thing that was around to treat HTLV-3 at the time. And did we want to go on the trial? And she explained the trial. And I was quite freaked out, because basically, one minute I've been told that I had this horrible disease that was going to kill me within a few years, and the next thing I know is, well, we got this thing that, we don't really know if it works or not, but, we might put you on a trial of it. No one's ever really tried it. And it just felt to me a bit weird that Professor Lee, who was a haematologist, a researcher, was the person who was doing this. And she didn't have... I've said this I think I've intimated this in my statement, and I'll say it to her. She didn't have the best people skills in the world. And I just felt a bit aggrieved that this is what we were being offered. So yes, it just seemed a bit weird. The director of haemophilia was trying to give us this drug no one knew very much about as a trial, and it was just all very scary. At that meeting, at the break, I was outside and I was talking to someone, and I'd like to just put on record his name. He's dead now. He died some time ago. His name is... And I only met him twice in my life, but I've met other people since who knew him. And he explained to me what AZT was. He was a biochemist. So I decided that I would decline and not go on that treatment. But I know plenty of people who do, and I know that plenty of relatives of people who have died who've been on it think that that's what killed them.
And you've described challenging Professor Lee in this group patient meeting, expressing your anger that you'd all been infected and all they could offer was a trial of an unlicensed, highly toxic medicine. And you said Professor Lee's reply is one you won't ever forget. What was that? Yeah,
I will tell you that, and then I will say something about how I feel about that. Yeah, I mean, I got quite angry about it, and Professor Lee basically said, you're lucky you're living in the UK because your healthcare is free, but you wouldn't get it free in America. Now, since I wrote my statement about a year ago, and obviously being involved with the inquiry, I'm just very aware that we don't demonise individuals. There are plenty of individuals that I would like to explain their actions. And they should be approached by the inquiry and asked questions. And many people, and I feel many people did many wrong things. But I don't wish to demonise Professor Lee. I just don't think she was very good with patients. I think she was probably a very good research doctor. But I put it out there just so that people can understand what it was like. Because I had been told I had a life-threatening condition that was probably going to kill me in a few years, and this is the sort of response I was getting from my NHS doctors, and it just wasn't very good.
You learned in 1990 that you'd also been infected with hepatitis C. And we're just going to put up on the screen, please, Paul, it's 100, you're ahead of me. So it's a document, it's not terribly easy to read, but I think most of it is just about legible. It looks like it's October 1990. And it says this: I'm writing to tell you about the new anti-HCV test. Many haemophiliacs who've been treated in the past with unheated clotting factor concentrates or other blood products have been exposed to the non-A, non-B hepatitis virus, so-called because it's unrelated to hepatitis A and unrelated to hepatitis B. One agent responsible for non-A, non-B hepatitis has now been identified by recombinant gene technology as the hepatitis C virus, HCV. We have a new test available which measures antibody to HCV, anti-HCV, and show past infection. And then if we can see the rest of the letter. Sorry, can we just have the middle bit, which has the single line paragraph highlighted, please, Paul? Right in the middle. Your anti-HCV, it's not entirely, your test anti-HCV positive on, and then the date I think is the 21st of August 1990. And then the letter continues, some people who've been exposed to non-A, non-B HCV in the past may after many years go on to develop chronic hepatitis, but we cannot determine who will progress in this way. Although there are some trials of treatment for such liver disease, no one is using treatment on a regular basis in haemophiliacs at present. Although it's possible the non-A, non-B hepatitis HCV can be spread sexually, information in this area is at present very limited. And then it talks about being pleased to further discuss it with you if you want to make an appointment. What can you recall about being told in this way of the hepatitis C infection, and what, if any, observations do you have to make about it?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised because I asked you earlier whether anyone had shown you this similar letter, and considering it would have gone out to quite a few hundred patients at the Royal Free, I was just surprised. My first reaction on getting that was, whoa, it's pretty scary. But then I've just been told this other thing. Is this what it's going to be like? Okay, I'll get on with it. I also took two things from the letter. I took almost some comfort from the fact that, to me, that letter, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but to me that letter basically says, well, you've got another virus, but that's probably going to be all right. But we're just letting you know. And the other thing about that letter is, and you can't tell because it's been photocopied so many times, is that the centre director, once again, Professor Lee, didn't even sign it. It's PP'd, I think, by someone, and is it called photostated rather than photocopied? It was sent out to hundreds of patients. And I suppose in one way I felt I took comfort from that because it was almost like a circular, because you would expect if a doctor was writing to you with some very, very heavy news that it would at least be signed by them, and it would be it wouldn't look as though it was going out to hundreds of people, but it was, wasn't it? So yeah, I mean, it was hard enough learning to live with HIV. I think I'd probably put it to the back of my mind.
You moved at some stage from your haemophilia care from the Royal Free to St Thomas's and the haemophilia centre there.
Yep.
Was your experience there any different or any better?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have to remember that I've always thought that it must have been impossible for a haemophilia centre to continue caring for its patients and the patients' families after what had happened properly, because surely all trust had gone. You have to remember that we were told this was a mistake, and it's dreadful, but let's move on. But over the years, I don't think anyone can deny that it's a little bit more complicated than that. So, in my instance, my relationship with the Royal Free Hospital was just horrible. It just turned into, like, it was just so aggressive. And for me, I was aggressive because I asked questions and they weren't answered, and I was the response to my questions was passive-aggressive from them. So you're asking me the difference. Yes, when I went to St Thomas's, it was very different, but you also have to remember that St Thomas's wasn't the hospital I was at when I was infected. There were patients who were infected at St Thomas's as well. So certainly, yes, it was a good thing for me to do because my relationship with the Royal Free Hospital, with individuals in there, had just fallen to pieces. It was just ridiculous. It couldn't continue.
You have, I think, based upon your time at St Thomas's, have an observation about the role of haemophilia centre directors in the acquisition, the commissioning of factor products.
Yes. It's sort of something I've known. Now, this is my understanding, and I'm sure that the inquiry can find out the truth. And it's my understanding from discussions with the then haemophilia centre director at St Thomas's, from my discussions with him, from my discussions with other haemophilia doctors over the years when I've done voluntary work, and other patients from St Thomas's who I have known on a personal basis and a sort of work basis. So it is my understanding that certainly at that point when I went there, so that would have been about 1990, I think, that large haemophilia centres, their directors would be responsible for commissioning, buying in factor concentrates from different companies, so from the American companies, maybe European companies, and from BPL at Elstree. They would be buying it in at, I always remember because he used to boast. He used to boast. That was the kind of guy he was. But maybe boasting is wrong, I don't know. But he used to talk about it. He was proud of it. He was proud of it. He would get top dollar. He would get the best deal. And he always talked about it in price per units. These are just conversations I remember with him. He was a very charismatic man. So he would be in discussions with the different pharmaceutical companies to buy in, to purchase the product. And then I understand that he would use some of that himself and that he would sell some of that onto the smaller centres, because there's a hub and spoke type system of the larger haemophilia reference centres and the smaller centres. And this is just something that really quite interested me. I didn't even think of it, I think, at the time in terms of viruses. I just thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. But what it does mean, which is important to me, is if it's true, and I'm sure it is, and obviously you will check it, and if I'm wrong, then maybe I'm wrong, but this is my understanding, and I have spoken to other haemophilia centre directors about it. It means that haemophilia centre directors would go out with pharmaceutical company representatives, and I know that happened because I used to meet up with pharmaceutical reps at Haemophilia Society events and say, oh yeah, yeah, I was there with him. And it's not just, it isn't about him, it's just, this is how I know through him. It's other haemophilia doctors. So for a number of years, the way that haemophilia clotting products were brought in for use by patients was the doctors talking to the pharmaceuticals and trying to get the best price they could. And that would have involved jollies. It would have involved meals out. It would have involved going down the pub, playing pool. It would have involved, in one case, I have heard of, a cruise for haemophilia doctors. And that was the way it was, and that was how it was accepted. And it has, to my knowledge, once again, only been relatively recently, in the last 15 years, that has changed to the proper system that we have now of commissioning of haemophilia products.
Just want to take you back to the years immediately following your diagnosis. You've told us how you were scared, frightened. You had questions to which you didn't get answers. What was the impact of the diagnosis and the responses you would get when you asked questions on your mental health?
Sorry. Wow. That's really hard. And it wasn't just then, it's still now.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you understand that. It's a battle. I think most of us with haemophilia forget the viruses. We're just sort of tough. And we are tough. And we all wobble about and fall over and like limping. But inside, this generation, and it is mainly of men, and that's only my experience I can speak of, we have spent so much time in hospital. We have spent so much time in pain. We have spent so much of our time doing that whilst being treated by a sometimes very uncaring NHS, sometimes very good NHS, but sometimes very uncaring NHS. And I think that toughens you up for what basically happened to us in terms of mental health. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Physically, in terms of your health, can you tell us how you were physically from the years following the diagnosis in the 1980s through to more recent times?
Physically, I've got older, my joints hurt more, I take more care of myself. Are you talking in terms of of haemophilia damage and?
No, the effect, of the physical effects,
Yeah.
physical health effects of both the HIV infection
Right.
and the hepatitis C.
Oh right.
infection.
Oh goodness. Well, I became very ill. I mean, this is a common story for many of us, most of us. I became very ill for a period of time, had 2 bouts of pneumonia, had 27 CD4s, became very ill, went on treatment, probably should have gone on treatment earlier, was ill for 2, 3, 4 years on and off with HIV-related conditions. Then when I went on the early antiretrovirals for HIV, they made me ill. We all know about the side effects. I'm not going to go into them, but they're pretty horrific. So that was difficult. With Hep C, I mean, we all know about it because most of us have been through it. I went through 3 rounds of treatment, interferon, ribavirin, sofosbuvir, and I can't remember the last one, which batters your body and batters your mind. You've had people more eloquently than I can explain what Hep C treatment is like, and I don't need to repeat that because enough people have done that. So yeah, and now as I'm getting older, I'm getting stuff that older blokes get, and that's been compromised by HIV, and even though I've finally cleared Hep C, it's probably compromised by that as well. So, did I answer that? Not did I answer it rightly, but is that what you were looking for?
It is, and just in terms of the antiretrovirals for HIV, you've been on those since about 2003, I think, from your statement.
I think so, yeah.
And you've had to have the treatments changed, I think, a number of times over the years because of the repeated and very unpleasant side effects. In terms of the treatments for hepatitis C, you've identified 3 courses of treatment.
Yeah.
2010 was the interferon ribavirin,
Yeah.
and you experienced the full range of side effects.
I went mad, yes. So I stopped taking it because I didn't want to go mad anymore.
You then had a second round of treatment in 2015.
Yeah.
that was the ribavirin and sofosbuvir. What was that like?
Right, that was pretty. One interesting thing that I think most of us have worked out is we always blamed just interferon. I think certainly my feeling now, and a lot of people agree, is that yes, interferon wasn't very nice, but the ribavirin for me was the killer. And it's interesting because the sofosbuvir and ribavirin. Okay, so I had to fight for that. This was only 3 years ago. I had to fight for it because it's expensive. I was 24 hours away from either going to India or by mail order buying generic drugs from the Indian market that were shown to be the real thing, but India can get round the generic thing. And loads of hundreds of thousands of people do it because the NHS wouldn't pay for it. I was within 24 hours of actually doing that, having waited 3 months to go on sofosbuvir. What I didn't realise was that I probably shouldn't have gone on ribavirin as well, A, because I didn't realise that it would cause all those mental problems. I just thought it was interferon. But B, because there was a better drug, I can't remember its name, there were probably many. My clinician could have put me on a much better drug. He could put me on sofosbuvir and something else. But he didn't because of the budget. I've got all the time in the world for him, and I don't need to name him, and it wasn't his fault. There's a 95% success rate. I was one of the 5%, and I failed. Luckily, I only had to take it for 3 months, but it was as bad as taking ribavirin and interferon. But my clinician did say to me after that, yes, I gave you ribavirin for cost reasons. So not only did I have to fight for it and almost have to go to India or go mail order to India, but it didn't work, and it all cost money.
At the time you prepared your statement, you hadn't had the third course of treatment. You now have had that third course of treatment. What was that like, and what was its outcome?
There's a doddle. I wouldn't have known I was on it. I approached that in an entirely different way to the other two, because I was very aware. By then we'd learned. We're the guinea pigs. We're always the guinea pigs. As men, and it is male. I know there are women with bleeding disorders and plenty of women who have been affected by this as well, but I can only talk about them with haemophilia. And we're the guinea pigs. And we were the guinea pigs with Hep C treatment. So what was your question?
About the third course of treatment. You were telling us it was a doddle.
Okay, so I realised by then, as long as it's not got interferon, and as long as it's not got ribavirin, and I read enough stuff, and there's enough known, and there are enough places to go, I could see that this drug, I can't remember what it was called, remember?
You've given me the name and I can't remember it.
It doesn't really matter. It was just one tablet to take once a day for 3 months. And I just approached it totally differently. I was so relaxed about it because I basically knew that I wasn't going to get side effects. I actually didn't think it would clear the virus. Maybe that's another reason it didn't worry me. Anyway, it didn't give me any physical side effects at all. I didn't not forget to take it, but it was in with my other pills, and it was actually the same colour as one of my HIV pills, which was rather good because it wasn't always there every morning. So I almost forgotten people who go, "How you going on the treatment?" Because that's what we say to each other. Hey, going, "Oh yeah, I'm on treatment." So you can see it makes me happy. And I didn't actually think I'd clear Hep C, and I did. And I still don't really think I have, but.
And that was this year?
Sorry, yes, that was within the last 6 months, yes.
Do you have any ongoing follow-up in terms of the state of your liver? Are you receiving ongoing liver care, scans, fibroscans and the like?
Yes. Hospitals all do it differently. My hospital is very belt and braces. It's interesting because I was talking to someone else about this the other day, and this is interesting. He cleared 10 years ago, and he's never been back for a scan. Anyway, I will go for yearly scans. I went for a scan recently, and they find nodule. Apparently, this happens to quite a lot of us. I didn't know this. but it's happened to me over the years. Apparently on the scans they can find nodules on the liver. I don't really know what that means, but I had to go back and have a CT scan with the dye in, and it's really worrying. It's really frightening, and I've had to do it all my life, had liver scans on and off. So I will go back for scans. Yes, I have cleared Hep C, but my consultant explained it to me in a really interesting way by saying, well, actually, you're really lucky because you're getting regular liver checks, whereas most men of your age aren't. So I suppose it's a good thing because if anything does happen to my liver, well, you can't really say irrespective of Hep C, can you, once I've had Hep C all those years? But anyway, if anything happens to my liver, they'll catch it quickly. And I suppose that's a good thing. But it does mean that there's always that. The last scan, I had to go back and have another scan, and it was horrible because I'd just cleared Hep C and I was supposed to be joyous, but I wasn't. I was scared again. But no, it was okay. It was... they couldn't find anything significant, and apparently this is quite normal because the liver moves about a lot. I don't know what the technical term for it is, but yeah. So I will keep going back. I don't know if they test you for Hep C anymore. I would hope they would, just in case it comes back. I must ask that. I hadn't even thought of that. But yes, I will have liver checked. But not everyone does, but I will have my liver checked for the rest of my life, which is probably a good thing.
And in terms of other physical effects, you say in your statement that as a result of the HIV infection, you've suffered both osteoporosis and body face fat distribution for which you've had to have treatment.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got osteoporosis. It doesn't mean a thing to me because you don't feel it, but it means your bones are brittle, I think. Basically, it's explained to me when I get older, try not to fall over. I know that sounds flippant, but we do get so many things. Yeah, I got stuff with the face where my cheeks go in. Everybody knows about it. And I go and have injections that make it look better for a while. It's not very nice. I've had to learn to live with it. There are people who get it worse than me. Yeah, we all live with side effects from our drugs and from our infections.
What were you told about the risk of vCJD and possible exposure to that?
Sorry, I've noticed I've sighed three times. I can't help it. Okay, vCJD. Oh, Jesus. I can't even remember when it was. At the time I was working, and I just remember I got a letter like everyone else to say that because I'd received plasma or plasma-derived blood product within a certain number of years, and because of mad cow disease I was therefore on the at-risk register, I must tell a dentist. I did a lot of research into it because at that time, so I was ideally placed to get information on it. It's something that I have never really worried too much about because my understanding of it is I don't think I'm going to get it, and I don't think any of us are going to get it, but I don't expect anyone to listen to me because that's... but from my understanding and talking to people about it is it's crazy, it's scary, it's yet another thing in the blood supply. Yes, but I shrugged it off pretty much. That doesn't mean it's not bad and shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened.
And one of the consequences of that notification that you've received, you describe in your statement, is the knock-on impact on dental care and ability to find a dentist who'll treat you and other forms of medical care.
Yes, it has never affected me, any form of medical care. I know that for quite a lot of people it had an effect on certain operations they had to have, and I won't go into detail of them because they didn't affect me and I can't do that justice. As far as dentists are concerned, the whole when you got haemophilia, dentist is a joke anyway for men of my generation. When I was a kid, I either didn't receive any dental care at all, or they pulled my teeth out. That's what I remember. And a lot of people do this, a lot of people in Philly do this. They stop brushing their teeth when they're young because their gums bleed, whereas actually what you should do if your gums bleed is you should brush your teeth more, but be careful. Dental care was rubbish when I was a kid. Absolute rubbish, whether you got haemophilia or not. So then you have to go to a dentist to tell the dentist that you got HIV, which they freak out about, even now sometimes. You're a bit of a nuisance. And you have to tell them about Hep C. And then, so when, with this vCJD notice, you are told you have to, it's a matter of public health, you have to tell a dentist. Other than a dentist working out of a hospital, I have told one dentist this, and they've looked at me and gone, I beg your pardon? And just carried on. The dental care thing, though, is important. Dental care is really important to us. It's especially important regards HIV because, although it doesn't happen much nowadays, the dentist can check your mouth and there can be signs of different infections that people can get. And in the early days of HIV, that was really important, that people with HIV went to regular dental checkups because you could find problems that were arising quickly. But to get dental care is a nightmare. So, at St Thomas's Hospital, I can access basic dental care. I think I can have an appointment every 6 weeks, and they'll do a course of treatment, and then they'll send you away. And then if you have a problem, you've got nowhere to go. I live 2 hours away. You can't go anywhere. And if you want to get back on the 6 week, this is how I understand it. It just gets all so boring. If you want to get back on the 6 week list, you have to get one of your nurses at the haemophilia centre to put you back on. So you may have guessed, I don't go there. I have been there, and the dental care was excellent. But it's at a hospital, it's 2 hours away, you can't just go in. So I actually, at the moment, I have a local dentist who is really good. And it is better than it used to be, but for years and years and years it was dreadful, and I know that it's still not easy.
You've talked about the lack of practical support and information from the NHS in terms of dealing with the viruses. Did you receive support or look to support from other organisations, non-NHS organisations?
Yeah, when I was first diagnosed with HIV, yes, because I had to. So, as I said, when I was diagnosed at the Royal Free Hospital, they couldn't answer my questions. So what I did, I actually rang up the Haemophilia Society and went to see them about this whole thing anyway. And they offered to fund me to do some training courses, and I ended up researching and learning about stuff through joining up with some gay men's groups in London, mainly Body Positive, who aren't around anymore, but they were a large organisation who sort of merged into THT. Everybody's probably heard of Terence Higgins Trust now, but these were the early days. So yeah, I went and I got my information and support from this group, who was mainly gay men. And I also, I think it was mentioned by somebody else sitting here the other day, contacted a group called Mainliners, who were an IVU drug users forum, who aren't around anymore, and got a lot of support and clinical information through them, because I wasn't getting it anywhere else.
And you also, I think, undertook training yourself, became almost your own professional advocate.
Yes. As my legal team say, I professionalised my virus. Thank you. And it's true. Yes, well, I got a job. And I found out stuff as well. It's as simple as that. Yeah, sorry, I'm being flippant. I shouldn't be flippant. So yes, I started to find out more about HIV. I went on more training courses. I contacted my local health authority, who were in the process of setting up a voluntary group, and I was actually the perfect person. Oh, he's got HIV. Just grab him straight away. And I used my experience and skills, what I was doing anyway, to help set up a local support group, which is still going. And then until I had to retire and not work anymore.
You've told very few people about your HIV status, and that includes close relatives, parents, siblings, your children now adults. Can you tell us a little about that to the extent that you feel able to or want to?
Yep. Yes, I haven't told my adult sons, but that's not something I want to talk about here. I didn't tell either of my parents. They died. My mum died about 7 years ago, my dad 4 years ago. Or my siblings. But I think it would be interesting about why I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my parents because when something like this happens to you, when something this scary and dreadful happens to you, as far as I'm concerned, the only reason for telling someone else is so they can support you around it. And so therefore, the person you've got to tell has got to be able to support you. If I had told my mother who used to inject me, my mother who used to sit up all night while I was in agony with ankle bleeds and knee bleeds and elbow bleeds, my mother who had to drive across the home counties to get me to Oxford Hospital, my mother who had to look after 3 other kids. If I'd told her about this at that time, she wouldn't possibly have been able to support me. Luckily, I was in my late 20s. I know a lot of the guys who were told when they were kids, so they had no choice. And if I was younger, maybe it would have helped. But basically, she wouldn't have helped me. She wouldn't have been able to because she would have felt so guilty because she would have thought it was her fault, even though it wasn't. And she just wouldn't have been able to take it on board. And my father, because he was a very old-fashioned type of father, it doesn't mean he didn't care about me. He cared a great deal about me, but he wouldn't talk to me about it. So I didn't tell them. And over the years, I did try to tell them. But every time I tried to tell them, it's really weird, they would stop me from telling them. I don't know, I'm sure people have had this experience when you have something really important you want to tell someone. I would start to tell them and they would change the subject. It's really, really weird. And that's a personal thing anyway. But my main point is, how could I tell them? How could I tell my mum, who had brought me up and done all that hospital stuff with me and seen me in pain, how could I tell her, Mum, I've got AIDS, look at this. So, I didn't tell them. I have 3 sisters. I didn't tell them till 10 years ago. That's it really. It's important about my parents why I didn't tell them, because to me it seems obvious why I didn't tell them. My other stuff I don't wish to talk about here. But I'm also a very personal and private person, and although we talk about HIV being acceptable now, why it should have to be acceptable, but there is still discrimination. When I go for clinics at the hospital, they know I have HIV and Hep C, and I still have to tell them why I've got HIV, and I don't like that in myself, because I'm not spreading the word about this. I'm really not. I'm feeling that they're looking at me. Remember, in the 1980s, to be told you had AIDS or were going to get AIDS or you were HIV positive was horrific. And it still is there, and it's still in me. I still feel the need to justify myself, and I hate that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thank you. You also say in your statement that you didn't tell neighbours, schools, friends, you kept it private, and you've put it this way: my life since infection has been a lie.
Oh, completely. And I've heard that here this week, and I've heard it ever since the inquiry started up. Yeah, not everyone. Some people are very open about it, but I don't think most of us are. Yeah, we lied because And we were encouraged to lie. We weren't told to lie, but we were encouraged to lie. And considering that my sole income for many, many years was from the MacFarlane Trust and from benefits when I was lucky enough to get them, and I just wanted to live a normal life. I had kids. I just wanted to be like, you know, normal's the right word. Everybody's got a job, haven't they? No, not everybody's got a job. Even if you haven't got a job, you do something, and sometimes you've got a job, and sometimes you're unlucky enough and you haven't. But I never had a job. Well, I did have a job, I just wasn't paid for it.
Well, in fact, I think you say in your statement, discrimination forced you out of your first career, first line of work, and then in ill health then
Yes.
brought the second area of work to an end.
Yeah, sorry. So my first line of work was working, and the manager knew that I had haemophilia, and I was asked by her, when it became apparent that people with haemophilia were being infected with HTLV3, then HIV, I was asked by my manager, sort of told by my manager, that I must address a staff meeting and explain why I wasn't a danger to them. She knew I had haemophilia. She didn't know whether I was positive or not. She didn't even ask me, and it was none of her business anyway. So yes, so that was the end of a 12-year career, because it was actually a really good job, because I wasn't in a good place to be there anyway. But that was why I left, because she asked me to do that. And then ill health meant that I couldn't continue with the
You say in your statement that that's forced you into the nightmare, which is claiming DWP benefits. And I
Yes.
wondered if you wanted to say what you meant by that.
Yeah. So, since 1991, basically, our hospitals encouraged us all to go to claim disability living allowance, which, as you probably know now, we're being transferred over to PIP. So, that was supposed to be for life. I couldn't work. I couldn't work for money. I could work on a volunteer basis, but I couldn't work for money, because I just had too many hospital appointments and I was poorly from time to time. I couldn't hold down a job. So I claimed benefits. And over the years, it's no different from all of us, I think. You know, all of us who claim benefits. It's not an easy thing to do, because you have to lose some of your pride to do it, and you have to lie to other people about what you're doing. And they hound you. They come to your house. I remember I was doing my voluntary work. I got a phone call from my ex-wife to say that someone from I think it was the DSS then, anyway, the local council, had tried to put their foot in the door and come in and check our house. Luckily, she was made of stern stuff, and that's told them to go away. Following on from that, we had people come round and they would visit us and they would ask us questions. And they were checking us out to see what we were about. And this is, you know, lots of us have had to do it, lots of people do. So it's just been a battle over the years to continue to get benefits, and it's pretty soul destroying as well. But interestingly, and especially with disability living allowance, DLA, it suddenly got an awful lot easier. And it got easier when the inquiry and the GLO was announced. And it really did happen. Inquiry was announced, and then suddenly, through campaigning as well, because a number of people who campaigned for this inquiry were also campaigning for better benefits, and everything seemed to get a little bit better. So at the moment, I'm very lucky, and because of my age as well, I'm now at disability benefits that I'm due. I am signed off, basically. That doesn't mean everybody is, but I am. But it's been horrific. And I think the most important thing is that twice there I've talked about my pride, and you just lose your pride. But you have to do it.
There are two aspects about your family life I wanted to ask you, not your children, but your family life. If you don't want to talk about either of them, just say so. The first is in relation to when you and your then wife were hoping to start a family.
Yep.
And the experiences you went through and some of the research that you undertook.
Yep. No, I'm happy to talk about that. 2 or 3 years after being told I had HIV, I met a woman I fell in love. She wanted to have children. Because I'm a bloke, I didn't realise that. But I soon found out. I'd never thought about having children, not because of haemophilia or HIV, I just never thought of having children. I thought, oh yeah, that'd be nice, that'd be good. Okay, so we got a stumbling block here, I got HIV. So, through my work and through contacts I had, although I didn't need to do it through work, I found out research that way back in the late 80s, there was research that showed that if you were undetectable for HIV, therefore if HIV was not active in your body, then your chances of heterosexual sexual transmission were basically zero. Now, this wasn't the public health message that the government wanted to give over at the time, and it wasn't widely talked about or announced. But what it was basically saying was that as long as the virus was undetectable in your body, you would not pass the virus on. Now, I found this research in the late 80s, and I got it verified. When I took it to my haemophilia doctors, they didn't want to know because it scared them. But for that reason, then, my then wife and I, the mother of my children, went on and had kids the normal way. Over my years of voluntary work, I have tried carefully to let that information be known to other people with haemophilia who might want to start a family. That doesn't mean that everybody would want to do it, and it also doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that everybody wants to do it, and I understand that, but I wanted that information to be out there. And it's interesting that actually this year, this research has continued since that time, and it was in the news recently as though it was brand new news. No, it's good that it's done. And in sexual health clinics now, they have something that's called UU, which is undetectable, untransmissible. Before that, there was, someone talked about sperm washing, I think, today. I can't remember who. I went to the Royal Free Hospital to talk about sperm washing. So where the sperm is taken out and washed and then artificially inseminated, which I think the rate of success is less than normal artificial insemination. So it's not a very good success rate, but the science is good, but the chances aren't much, and it's very, very expensive. And that was something that my then wife and I explored first through the MacFarlane Trust, but we were turned down completely and told, I think it was they would pay for some of it, they'd pay for your accommodation or something while you were in London. I can't remember. I mean, for me and her, we didn't consider it for very long, but it was made we were told we couldn't have it. We asked the hospital, the Royal Free, if they'd fund it, and they said no, it wasn't in their budget. So, yes, that's my experience of that.
And more broadly, in terms of relationships or family life, is there anything further that you would like to say about that and the impact of your infections on family and private life? You've dealt with it in your statement. It's really whether there's anything you wanted to say orally or not.
The only thing I can think of is that one of the biggest issues for me when I was told I had HIV was I was a single man, and it sort of put me off having sex with anyone for quite a long time. I made that very, very difficult indeed. And I was lucky enough to find someone who I fell in love with, and that was all okay. But for a long time it wasn't okay, and it isn't necessarily okay now.
The MacFarlane Trust. What were your experiences of the MacFarlane Trust? I think there was a particular series of events that you thought were beneficial that were then stopped.
Yes, I could sit here all day, and I'm not going to, Jenny, and talk about the MacFarlane Trust. Because I was involved I worked closely with the MacFarlane Trust, so I was working closely with them in helping them with other people to put on events and to get the funding for that. At the very beginning, the MacFarlane Trust were very strange. They were this very strange entity who were basically throwing white goods at you. Social workers through the hospitals were calling people who'd been told they were positive in and saying, fill this form in, you can get a fridge, you can get a microwave. I remember it really well. I remember saying, I've got a fridge, I've got a microwave, have another one. It was seriously like that. So that was the beginning of the MacFarlane Trust. The government at the time wanted the Haemophilia Society to set up this fund that became the MacFarlane Trust. They wanted to give it a bunch of hush money to shut us up because they thought that we were only going to live between 3 and 5 years. The Haemophilia Society said, no, we can't be a support charity and give people money, which was right. They didn't always do things that were right, but that was right. So the MacFarlane Trust was set up. It was set up with trustees who were, these are my words, a bunch of old crusties who had haemophilia. Most of them had escaped getting HIV. They were very moralistic about any money they would give you, and there wasn't much money in it to begin with anyway. It grew into a complete and utter monster. It grew into an under-resourced hardship fund, funded by the Department of Health, not as compensation, as we know, but as a charity to support people from being in poverty and to help people and their families, and I'm sort of quoting from one of their many deeds, to help people and their people living with haemophilia and HIV who are living with haemophilia who are infected with HIV and their families. It was set up to help us. But it was totally under-resourced. It wasn't given enough money. And it was also set up as a charity, so it had a group of trustees and a chair of trustees at the top who were unpaid volunteers. And then they had paid staff underneath that. The trustees, once again, seemed to be people they all seemed to be very middle class, mainly white male, not all male, but mainly. Professional people who came from banking or insurance often. Some from the NHS, yes. Some from the legal profession. No, were there any? I don't know if there were any. They were mainly quite middle-class white people, some of them with a history of haemophilia and HIV that should never have been involved because of that history. I hope that makes clear what I'm trying to say. So, it continues to be under-resourced, and it continues to be run rather strangely. At one point, half the office seemed to be related to each other. I will quite happily go on record as saying that there was nepotism in the office for people who were employed there. And there were some things going on there that I didn't like very much. But I'm honest enough to admit that I played the game. And because I'm the sort of person, I'm not unlike some of the people who were trustees. I'm quite middle class, I'm white. I went to a direct grant school, which is near enough a public school, and I went to school with these sort of people. So I used that advantage, and because I was doing them a favour, I was helping them to set up events. I knew what I was doing, and I used that, and I didn't have too much trouble getting grants and things like that. But I knew then, and I found out certainly since the inquiry opened and some of the recent witnesses that we have heard from, specifically it seems to me women who have been treated absolutely dreadfully. I'll finish that bit and then I'll go back. So, there was a period in the beginning, then a period in the middle. So this period in the middle, when I was involved, they did do some good things with me by putting on events for people. Not everybody wanted events, but some people did. They were also doing some things that I wasn't necessarily totally aware of at the time that I don't agree with. And then suddenly that middle bit stopped. And, what's his name? Roger Evans and Jan Barlow took over. And from being, however wrongly they behaved, some of the trustees and people that were there, for however wrong they were interested in working with us to help us, to make things better and to run events and talk to us. But almost overnight, it was probably over a few months, but it seemed overnight because I'd left, I wasn't involved at that point anymore, but almost overnight, any of the working with beneficiaries that was there, whoa, and not just whoa, it was really aggressively, no, we don't want to talk to you anymore. They went through the motions of setting up meetings. We had regular meetings. They just basically washed their hands of us and said, no, we don't want anything to do with you anymore. We are purely a financial machine, and we will give you money. We won't talk to you anymore. We will not discuss grants. We will not discuss how we approach the Department of Health about budgets. We will not have any more events for you. We're not going to spend the money on that. So I'm aware I'm rambling a bit about the MacFarlane Trust because I get so angry about it. What you've got to look at is, so we can demonise people, and people have been talked about, people who were chairs and chief executives of the MacFarlane Trust, and I don't need to repeat them again, the people that work there. And we can demonise them, but who put them there in the first place? The government put them there in the first place. The government thought they could wash their hands of us by setting up an under-resourced hardship fund and throwing these people at it and saying, go on, you go and sort them out. No one is equipped to do that. It was either a charity or it wasn't a charity. It was either just a financial body or it wasn't a financial body. So the MacFarlane Trust is a complete and utter monster, which hasn't gone yet. I think at the last hearings, it was mentioned that the MacFarlane Trust closed down and they gifted £800,000-ish to the Terence Higgins Trust. Now, I have a lot of time for the Terence Higgins Trust in the early days of HIV on a local level, and they helped MacFarlane Trust beneficiaries I know in their own towns and cities. And they also worked with me and came and helped me at the events, and they were very good. I think they've turned into a corporate monster. I went to see them about this, and the 800. What you have to understand is the MacFarlane Trust, for all of these people sitting here, they know what I'm talking about, and I think a lot of you who come here and who are involved are beginning to understand. They had a hold on us. I had a financial hold on us. That was horrible. And it still hasn't gone. Why did the MacFarlane Trust close itself down with £800,000 left and gift it to the Terence Higgins Trust with no, because of data protection, well, they say we couldn't give them a list of all of the people we have on our books? Well, yes, they could. There are ways of doing it. They gave it to them and ran away. And I don't know what Terence Higgins Trust have done with that, and I wasn't going to mention them until this week, because I went to see them and they were really good, and they said, please come on board and help us spend this money. And I said, no. I said, I don't want to go back there. You have to understand the emotional hold this organisation has on us, and that money is that emotional hold. It's still £800,000 is nothing, but it's still there. Why is it there? Why is it still there as the MacFarlane Trust money? This is ridiculous. I didn't say it like that. I was much calmer. But I said, no, but please keep me informed of what you're doing. And, you know, I'll come up and have a cup. I know some of them. I'll come up and have a cup of tea with you and a chat. And they haven't got hold of me for 3 weeks, and I've emailed them 3 times. So I'm really annoyed about that. But am I making myself clear?
Yes.
I'm not rambling too much?
No.
Good. That's the MacFarlane Trust. Long may it be buried and die and go away.
You've been involved in two pieces of litigation.
Yes.
You were involved in the HIV litigation that resulted in having to sign a waiver, and you've said in your statement you didn't feel you had any choice. You had to sign to say you wouldn't take further legal action regarding infection with blood or blood products.
Yeah.
And you were also involved in litigation in the US. And as I understand it, there's a difficulty talking about it, but you want to talk about it. Can you explain that?
Yes. I take it you don't need to know any more about the 1989 litigation against the government.
It's very much a matter for you.
Well, I
there's
signed the
anything you
waiver
want to
like
say.
everyone else. I was basically told if you don't sign the waiver, you won't get any money. So that was the beginning of the MacFarlane Trust. Yes, but of just as much interest is the American legal case. Over a number of years, a number of campaigners introduced themselves to various solicitors around the country that told us that they would get a legal case going and they get us loads of money. This moved to an American firm. I'm not going to name the firm. It's public record who they are. An American firm of lawyers who I think got in touch with 200-300 of us maybe, and over a period of years made a great show of coming over here and being American. It was good fun. They got our records. Some of us, not me, but some of us actually went over to America to be grilled by the pharmaceuticals. The object of this, by the way, was to sue the American pharmaceutical companies for infecting us with HIV and Hep C. It was really very American, and it was quite good fun. A lot of people were led to believe that there would be a lot of money at the end of the day. I never believed that. It wasn't costing me any money, and while it wasn't costing me any money, I was quite happy to be involved. I think it went on for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I can't really remember. At one point, something called forum non-convenience.
Yes, yep, you've got it right.
Right, which meant that we can't sue, as English people, we can't sue American companies.
For what happened in England.
Yes, thank you, Jen. I just don't know what to be asking you, shouldn't I? Okay. So it couldn't be tried there. It also had to come back, and the American firm had to hire 2 English firms to continue the case. I'm a bit fuzzy about it because it was a long time ago. So we all transferred from the Americans to 2 English firms who quite quickly came to some sort of settlement. When we got the settlement, we were told we were not allowed to say how much the settlement was for. We were not allowed to talk about anything about the case that wasn't in the public domain. I can't remember the amounts exactly. Somebody, you reminded me, knew them exactly yesterday, so you have the amounts. The important thing, the amounts are paltry. The important thing is that we were treated like that, not by the lawyers, that's all right, I don't mind that, but by the American pharmaceuticals, that we were given a small amount of money and told to shut up. And that rather rankles with me.
The final area I wanted to ask you about is just an issue that you've raised with me, and that's about as you get older and the generation of people that you've been talking about, of whom you are one, get older, your access to medical treatment and to haemophilia care.
Yeah, there's a cohort of my generation of men with haemophilia, thankfully still alive. However, we're still alive, but we've all got HIV, and we've all been taking HIV meds for many years. Most of us may have cleared Hep C, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't damaged our bodies, and the Hep C treatment has damaged our bodies. we're getting older. As one of the older ones now, I'm more aware of it than others. As you get older, your body starts to fall apart. Because we have haemophilia, because we have HIV, because we have or had Hep C, because we have been taking these medications, these toxic medications for so many years, our health is really complicated. Our haemophilia centres in general, I suppose I should only really talk about mine, but I do talk to other people. In general, they don't really know what to do, because haemophilia isn't it used to be quite a sexy, groovy kind of thing to get into if you're a medic, but it's not anymore, because the treatments for haemophilia are just amazing these days. So there aren't many people wanting to come into it. But there is this cohort of us guys all getting older, and it's not, the care isn't joined up. So if you go to your and also if I go to my GP, I'm just too much for him. He doesn't understand, or doesn't want to understand, all of the various complications. It's not even normally something very important, but like things like drug interactions. If I've got high blood pressure, and I had to check that the medication I was given for high blood pressure wouldn't interact. I was taking Hep C treatment at the time, wouldn't interact with that and with my HIV meds. Now I did it because I know how to do it. But I shouldn't have to do that. I really shouldn't have to do that. So yeah, I suppose it's just a question of in Ireland, in the Southern Ireland, I'm not quite sure what it is. We were talking about it earlier, but part of the financial settlement with the government for the people there with haemophilia and HIV, there is some sort of access to healthcare. I don't know what it is, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who know much more about that, and the inquiry can look into it. But I seriously believe, I don't want to put myself above anyone else at all, but I do think that we should have perhaps some sort of special access to healthcare. I don't think we should have to wait 3 months for a cardio when cardio problems may be caused by HIV or by the meds. And it's not a moral thing, or maybe it is a moral thing. It's something I believe very strongly in. And also, I look at my haemophilia centre, and they do a good job. But what can they do? Because they have a remit, and they can't take over as my GP either. But there's been confusion recently that I have a friend who had a cardio problem, and I only found out this week that he accessed his cardio through the haemophilia centre, which actually turned out to be a good thing. My cardio issue, thankfully, wasn't anything alike as difficult and complicated as his. It could have been, but it wasn't. But I asked my haemophilia centre, when I realised there'd be a 3-month waiting list from my GP, I asked my haemophilia centre if they would refer me, and they wouldn't. So that's just an example. That's not a complaint or anything. It's just an example that it really gets very difficult and confusing as I get older and when other things go wrong. And also I want to keep on top of my health. I don't want it always to be like fighting fires. I want it to be like trying to look after myself a bit. It's really getting difficult. And there's now going to be, thankfully, a lot of us that the NHS thought weren't going to be here, but we are going to be here. And some of us are going to present as quite complicated cases. So that's something I'd like to see addressed. And in as much as the inquiry's remit, I'd like to see the inquiry do that as well, please.
Those are the questions I have for you. I'm just going to ask Ms Monaghan, first of all, if she's got anything further to suggest.
Yes, yeah, no, I've got that. Thanks.
There's one point which Ms Monaghan has asked me to ask you if there's anything you want to say, and it's an issue touched on, I think, in evidence yesterday, about the stigmatisation of gay men and drug users.
What would Miss Monaghan like me to say about it?
It's your evidence, Mr. AK.
Pardon me a minute, I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, I can't. I have a friend who hasn't actually been called to give evidence who could make a much better, sorry Karen, who could make a much better answer. I'll try and answer that as much as I can. I think something that our doctors found very difficult when this happened was that HIV was seen as the gay plague. It was seemed to be something that happened to people who weren't quite normal, who were a bit weird, a bit scary, and a bit, oh, well, maybe they deserved it. And I think that got in the way of our doctors' reaction to what had happened to us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes? I've said that to you so many times today, haven't I? So, but I'd also like to say that there's a group, our group feel very strongly, our group with this representation feel very strongly that we have seen over the years since we were infected, the stigma that gay men, IV drug users and other people have had to put up with. We have shared it with them as well. And HIV, it was really, really difficult way back then, and it's still difficult now. And people who are seen as different are still discriminated against. And it's wrong. And when we look at haemophilia and HIV, it should be no different, and hepatitis C, it should be no different as anybody else with HIV and Hep C. So
Those are the questions I have for you, but is there anything else you would like to add?
just a little bit, honestly, quickly. Yeah, just overall about the whole situation. This inquiry is turning out to be absolutely brilliant. I never thought, Sir Brian, that anybody would treat us with such respect. And I know that's sad that I say that, but I really mean it. And not just us with respect, the whole situation with respect, and take so much time and care to delve into it and look into it. The important thing for me, though, is I'm also very aware that a lot of people, including me, have sat here and we have mentioned individuals, and we will do that, and there are individuals who need to be asked questions. But if it wasn't for the pharmaceutical companies making the stuff, if it hadn't been for them using blood as a commodity for money, selling blood and blood products for money, then this would never have happened. If it hadn't been for our government buying it from them, and it hadn't been the Department of Health and our doctors. So it all cascades down. And we need to look at the top where this has come from. And it came from the pharmaceutical companies originally. And I know this inquiry is only halfway through, a quarter of the way through, however long the way through it is. And I know there are times for things, but we mustn't forget. We mustn't scapegoat people. Yeah, we must we must ask people difficult questions about what they have done. We must also look at the broader picture and how that comes in. And in that way, how it happened and why it happened. But other than that, thank you, Jenny, thank you, Sir Brian, and thank you for everybody for the inquiry, because it's doing me a lot of good. Cheers.
Well, for my part, if I can just say that you described yourself at one stage earlier in your evidence as being flippant. I'll leave that for others to judge. I think, for me, given the fact that there are people very close to you that you don't want to know what you've been talking to us about, given that there are things that you won't talk about, even to us, that your discursive, easy way of putting it over really masks how much what has happened to you has affected you.
Yeah.
And that makes it all the more impressive that you should be here to tell us of that. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for those kind words. They're very true. Thank you. All right. I'm not standing up. Oh, no, I didn't answer Karen though, did I? Oh.
Now, tomorrow, not tomorrow,
Not tomorrow, please.
No, we haven't yet got as far as working on Saturdays. But
Well, I beg to differ. We work on Saturdays. We just don't sit on Saturdays.
You're speaking for all of us. Thank you. Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, we are hearing first from Elizabeth Hooper, then from Teresa Smith. We then have an anonymous witness, and we are then hearing from Robert Hodgkins.
And we start at 10.
And we start at 10.
And I look forward to seeing those of you who will be here then, and those others who are, I don't suppose anyone's out there because we're not live streaming, but seeing whoever comes. Thank you very much.